Everyone. Good afternoon, Professor Pandit. Good afternoon, Professor Saraf, and everyone present here. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the second online certificate course on climate, community, and conservation. This is the second one in the series that we started last year. The first one that we conducted last year was on ecology, environment, and sustainability. That too was also online, and as we all understand, and as the discussion just now was focusing on, that is a very unprecedented situation where everything is going online, and we thought of designing this, curating this course, an online certificate course on the issues which may be considered as the greatest threats, challenges of the 21st century, issues related to climate change, climate-induced disruptions in the planetary system and in our lives everywhere. So we have designed this course, Climate, Community, and Conservation, which is designed in three parts, three thematic areas. In the first part, called Climate Crisis, we would like to understand the nature and causes of the climate crisis, the gravity of the situation, taking us to the second part, Climate and Community, where each one of us become a stakeholder, rural, urban, everybody, every community has a role in contributing to the situation that we are in, and also in our best efforts in mitigation and conservation for our future. And the third theme is about community and conservation, where we will be focusing categorically on community roles, not only in preserving the flora and fauna, but in everything, the planet. So climate, community, and conservation, these are the three key words which we thought describes the situation. And in our background, we have the IPCC report, which has just come out 10 days ago, not even 10 days, the IPCC report. Then before that, we had the Economics of Biodiversity review, the review by Sir Partha Dasgupta, which is known as the Dasgupta Review, which talks about the economics of biodiversity, which came out only in February. In between, we had the National Progress Report on the SDGs. The Niti Aayog has published the Progress Report on the SDGs, which also has many of the goals which are related to the climate action, climate conservation, life underwater, life on land, all these. All these reports are actually perhaps, ringing the bell for the situation, which does not need explanation here. Again, I don't want to reiterate that. We all know. I mean, starting from a flash flood to landslide to wildfire and everything all around. So we thought this is perhaps high time that we revisit our action. We gain knowledge. We try to encourage our young minds to debate, deliberate, so that there can be policy action for the future. Because we have to ensure a sustainable future for our future generations, for generations to come. With this, we have designed this course, and we are hopeful that all of us will benefit from the course. And we have been very privileged that several experts, distinguished experts, have agreed to be the resource persons on this in this course, starting from Professor Maharaj Pandit, whom we will be hearing very shortly. The course is designed over 4 weeks. All the details are available on the website. So the participants are requested to visit the website, and the coordinators, Dr. Naveen Kumar Tiwari and Dr. Neha Mishra, they will give all the details of the schedule, structure, and these are also there on the website. So you are requested to visit, and more as we move along the course. Now I request our principal, Professor Babli Moitra Saraf, to address the gathering, and we proceed towards the inauguration of the course. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Saha. Thank you, Professor Pandit, for being here. Thank you, Dr. Tiwari, Dr. Mishra. I'm privileged to be surrounded by my colleagues who are, Professor Pandit, I say this to you, I'm privileged to be surrounded by colleagues who are so engaged with this entire area, and it's not only just a theoretical engagement, as I, as head of the institution, can confirm. There is so much happening on the ground here, even during the lockdown. in terms of the kind of census that the college carries out through the Center for Earth Studies, and also through our faculty on the ENVS. As you yourself know, you have been a patron of this center in a very essential way, because you were associated with its the first lecture, the inception lecture way back in 2016. You, of course, being a luminary at so many talks and inaugurations, may have forgotten, but we have not. And we are truly privileged, Professor Pandit, to have you here with us again. I think that apart from the concerns, human concerns that have been that have already been laid out, as well as will come up in the course of this, it is very important, I feel personally, to be a poet at heart, to be able to appreciate what all this has meant to us as the human race, the way in which our environment has constituted our experience of ourselves and of the world around us. And I feel specially attracted to Professor Pandit's work. I will just be giving you the details of his stature, but that never comprehends him. I have been attracted to his work because he has what many don't, in spite of being scholars, or he has that position. He has the patrimony of language, and he has a command over several languages, which in his work have formed keys to unlock the knowledge of centuries. And I think that his knowledge of his description or his scholarly work on the Himalayas is so much a part of this linguistic heritage and this linguistic ability of his, whether it is Kashmiri, whether it is Urdu. He spoke just now with, jo aap bhi, to jo tum bhi ho aur main bhi hu. I think it's very important to be able to envision the world as a poet, to have the idealism or even the ground realities that a poetic imagination comprehends in metaphors that are not available to everybody. I think what attracts me to Professor Pandit's work is his immense knowledge of Sanskrit, his knowledge of Persian, Urdu, Kashmiri, of course, Hindi, needless to say. But I think that forms an essential dimension of who Professor Pandit is. He is, of course, the Chief Executive Officer of the Institution of Eminence. He's the Dean and Chair, Research Council and Director CIS, MHE, University of Delhi. He has been the Radcliffe Fellow, Harvard University, Distinguished Visiting Professor, National University of Singapore, Dean of the Faculty of Science, Head of the Department of Environmental Studies, University of Delhi. And he's a renowned expert on Himalayan ecology. His work on the impact of dams on biodiversity and human communities is considered a pioneering work. The primary quest of his research is to understand the genetic and genomic causes of plant rarity and invasion and impact of land use and climate change on human livelihoods. What can be more important in our times? Ecology, biodiversity, rivers, and water resource sustainability, these are the areas on which his research has focused and continues to do so. His long-time researches on the Himalaya found expressions in the book called Nature, Just Nature. Professor Pandit is an acclaimed author of several works related to conservation and sustainability. His works have appeared in top-ranking international journals. His book, Life in the Himalayas, An Ecosystem at Risk, published by Harvard University Press, reflects on the conflicts between natural and the anthropogenic world. And he was elected Fellow of the Indian National Science Academy in 2016. National Academy of Sciences of India in 2015, and the Fellow of the Linnaean Society of London as far back as 2001. So we are talking about decades and decades of scholarly research and investigation here. And with that, Professor Pandit, it's still too little to encompass your attributes, which I will not even dare to do. So with these words, Professor Pandit, I welcome you and thank you very much for privileging us with your presence here today and your words, which are to follow very soon. I invite you, Professor Pandit, to address this gathering of very young scholars who are looking at you to provide a direction in this course. I also take the opportunity to thank my colleagues for organizing the second certificate course and not just depending on the prescribed syllabus of ENVS to consolidate our position as a research learning institute as the oldest women's college, Indraprastha College for Women. So thank you very much, dear colleagues, for organizing this. I invite Professor Pandit, who has now begun to share his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Maitra. It's always a pleasure to come back to the institutions which have actually geared you to do whatever you could in a small manner. I hope you're able to see my presentation. Well, can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir. Yes,
sir. Okay, great. Fine. So, so thank you. Thank you, Professor Maitra, Dr. Anandita, Dr. Naveen, Dr. Mishra, and other participants. I cannot see you, but I can feel you. And why I say it's always a pleasure, because there is no other reward or no other prize bigger than being able to speak to youngsters and try to influence them in a small way, so that we can collectively, because as Professor Saraf was just now mentioning, you know, that we are somehow losing the teacher in this whole process of education. And here and there would be some, I'm not saying that. I know there are good teachers, otherwise the institution would collapse. So so thank you for inviting me to this meeting. It is important to this program or course which you have started. And so I did sort of, I wasn't sure that what should be done. I thought that since it's going to be a kind of a classroom teaching, so I would rather, I would have liked to tell the participants, you know, because there is so much misgiving about the climate change, because people are somehow, you know, unable to distinguish between, you know, between climate and season and weather. So to quote a friend of mine, he said, well, climate is what you expect, weather is what you get. So in that context, but then Naveen sort of had the opinion that an artist must never dream outside his art. So this is Kipling's quote, so I don't want to take credit for this. So therefore he said that because of your years of work, whatever I have been able to do in Himalaya, so and I please tell everybody that we should say Himalaya, because Himalaya is the Sanskrit word, so we should not pluralize it, pluralize it, whatever, to English, in English. So we will keep it Himalaya. So Therefore, I said, all right, let me then, that's easy. That is the low-hanging fruit that I will be happy to do. So what I decided is that looking at the theme that you have chosen, climate, community, and conservation, I thought that I would touch upon the three and use Himalaya as a kind of a laboratory where I learned my lessons, and I want to bring those lessons to you, both in terms of climate, how climate is shaped, then how does that impact cultures and communities, and what has to be done with conservation. I would slightly bring conservation before the community, but that's the way I have, so I just wanted to talk first about why Himalaya, what is so important. So if I tell you that that India is what Himalaya gave it, and it's an extremely important geophysical feature in India, because the world before, that means the earth before and after the birth of Himalaya, was remarkably different. It was remarkably, because once this geophysical feature came on the earth's surface, the total earth changed, possibly for better. This mountain range has significantly impacted global and regional climate. It continues to do so. I will come to it in detail later. And importantly, it's a global biodiversity hotspot. That means an important global biodiversity epicenter. And it has the most diverse biomes on Earth. A lot of people may be telling you that Brazil and that Amazon basin, but actually it is Himalaya which has the most diverse biomes on Earth. It happens to be geologically the youngest but the tallest mountain range. It is biologically the longest bikilometric elevational gradient on Earth. But unfortunately, it is least known scientifically of the biodiversity epicenters, because a lot of people have mostly concentrated either on the Amazon basin, because that is possibly closer to America, the US, or Africa, which has mostly had European researchers working. And there is high plant species endemism. That means there are plants which are found only in the Himalaya. They are not found anywhere else. So that is the importance of Himalaya. Then, of course, you know that 10 major river systems arise from this. This is called the third pole, because outside the polar regions, it has 45 to 60,000 square kilometers of ice, and 1.5 billion people live in its basins. And unfortunately, in the context of climate change, it is the warmest mountain on Earth. And to top it, it is also, sadly and unfortunately, the most militarized zone on this earth. But the wonderful thing and the beautiful thing is that it is my home. It is there where the story begins. So let me take you back to what is the oldest ode to Himalaya. It happens to be none other than Kalidas, the great 5th century poet. For some, unknown reason why he said what he said, the most important thing which he said, that it's Earth's measuring rod, being great and free from change, it sinks to the eastern and the western seas. Now park this thought. Now, I have absolutely no idea when I have been talking to people, whether in North America or Canada or in Singapore or anywhere else, people often ask me that how is it possible? You are making it up. So I have to tell them, no, I'm not making it up. Actually, he had said it, and these are the. So 1970s, when the first satellite imageries of Earth became available, a lot of people, when I ask this, when I show this description to people, when I read it out to people, this, and when you see it here, rather, if you see this is the Himalayan range. This is on the east Arakan-Yoma bend when it goes down and ultimately gets into the, where Andaman Nicobar Islands, which are extensions of the Himalaya, northeastern hill region and all that, and it goes down to what is called the Pacific Sea, which is for unknown reasons called South China Sea, I don't know, but yes, Pacific Sea. Therefore, on the east, it goes down almost to Pacific Sea through these mountains. On the west, Suleiman Ranges, and then it meets the other sea on the other side on the west. So a lot of people ask me that how did Kalidas know? Well, I will leave that unanswered. I have no idea how did he know that Himalaya, almost sinks to the two major oceans on Earth, one on the right, one on the left, one on the east, and one on the west. So, so how did he know? I have no idea. Now let me come to the science of it, what scientists know. I will briefly tell you what happened during the, I will not take 60 million years, but I will tell you exactly what happened last 55 million years. So now think of it, 225 million years ago, this is how Earth was, and India was somewhere down here near where Antarctica is. And slowly it started drifting northwards. And this is how it was 135 million years ago. And it had reached almost equator about 65 million years ago at the time of, during Cretaceous, period. And this is how it is. So it covered 400 miles or 6,400 kilometers. Initially, it drifted anywhere between 18 to 27 centimeters a year. And it then slowed down to about 4 to 5 centimeters. Currently, it is moving roughly around 1 to 2 centimeters a year. And you can see from these arrows, it was going north to begin with. Then it suddenly decided to, sort of turn, because had it gone straight, it might not have fitted the pocket. You can see a small pocket here. So it turned in a way so that the eastern part of Indian plate, moving plate, hit the Asian plate here in the north, and it got as if there was a pocket, so ball and socket joint. So ultimately, this India, it got lodged into this, Asian plate here, and that's how. And once it hit the Asian plate, that is how Himalaya came up. That is how Himalayan mountains arose about 55 to 60 million years ago. They did not achieve the heights that they have currently, but it was in phases. So, a lot of people say that we should not collide. Collision is bad, but sometimes collision can bring out really beautiful things. Himalaya is part of that continent-to-continent collision. So collision sometimes can bring something beautiful as well. One of the most beautiful things, because I thought it was Sawan and it was the monsoon season. I don't know how many of you know. This is how the climate gets impacted. Prior to Himalaya being what they are at present, there was no monsoon in India. Indian continent, we used to get some kind of continental rain, like maybe the other areas which are passing through, which are near the oceans. So it was getting that kind of rain, but the kind of torrential rains we experienced, we had some very nice rain. So so the monsoon rains are a gift of Himalayan mountains, because prior to Himalaya reaching the heights that it reached, the wet winds or the moist winds when they came from the Bengal or the other side, they would just go over and go across to where Central Asia, or even where currently China and other Mongolia are. But India would have been extremely unfortunate, and had Himalaya not been there, because we would have been like, let me tell you, we would have been something like sub-Saharan Africa, and Himalayan rise changed all that. It gave rise initially to monsoon and then to perennial river system, but also later on to the perenniality of rivers was ensured by the number of glaciers that developed on the Himalayan heights. So not only did it give us yearly return, but it said that I will keep some water for you in fixed deposit. So the glaciers are our fixed deposit, and these glaciers are because of Himalaya. And in the eastern Himalaya, glaciers, they ablate during summer, but also they are added during summer, because in the western Himalayan glaciers, they generally they add to their mass during winter, but in eastern Himalaya it is during the summer rain. So there is ablation. That means the glaciers melt, but at the same time during the monsoon rains, they fatten also, if I may use that word. So and once we had this in place, we had lovely monsoon in place, we had brilliant, beautiful rivers in place, and then of course, we had, the time had then come for the humans to occupy. So this is a kind of a cartoon which I show that what exactly how it happens. So if you see this left one, about 35 to 25 million years ago, the average height of Himalaya was about 2,800 meters. So it then slowly started increasing. The height started increasing, and by Holocene it had reached almost these kind of heights. And if you see, when the average height was low, then the clouds would come and they would pass. They would go to across. But as the heights, Himalayan heights, reached the heights which they have currently, the moist winds from the ocean, they stuck, and then they brought rains. And rains do two things. Water, when it comes down the slopes. Now imagine a situation. This is, I don't know whether you have seen Ara machine, or what we call the sawmill. If you have seen, as children we had in our village. So this is the mountain slope, and this is the river. Okay, now river or glacier. So river or glacier is like this Ara or this saw, and the tectonic forces under the plate, they are like this thumb which is pushing this plate. So if you were to cut a piece of wood, if you just keep on putting the saw on top of it, it would take eons to cut. But if you push that plank from below, it will cut faster. So this is how the valleys are cut by rivers. So that's how. In fact, this is one of my teachers in college, Dr. Virendra Kumar, who for the first time when I went to Himalaya, I saw these huge, boulders on top. I simply asked him, we were in BSc, so I asked him, I said, sir, how come these, because the river is down there, who has brought these boulders up? So he was a humorous person, so he joked, he said, well, older people, they bring these things up. I said, but who embedded them in the mountains? Then he gave me first lesson of how rivers cut these mountain slopes, and because rivers are fast flowing, therefore they cut the slopes faster. Therefore, what you get is a V-shaped valley. These are deep V-shaped valleys, while glaciers, they are slow moving. They take years and years and millions of years to cut. They also give rise to rivers upstream, but it is a broad valley. That is why they are called U-shaped valleys. So this is called the fluvo-glacial process. Fluvio means river, glacier means glacial, glacial means river. So these processes determine the morphology of Himalaya. But I will park the thought. That means rivers can divide a mountain into two pieces of mountain, so can glaciers. Okay. Now, on the one hand, torrential rains or monsoon brought perennial rivers into place, but at the same time, it was bringing down tremendous amount of silt and sediment with the rivers. This, what I call the fluo-glacial system, was bringing, as you can see here, Ganga and Brahmaputra watersheds, they are merely 4.2% of the Earth's surface. They drain merely 4.2% of the Earth's surface, but they contribute 25% of the global sediment budget. Now, the consequence of this sediment budget was that, yes. Now, what happened was that when rains and water, they corrode these slopes, mountain slopes and rocks, they take out calcium carbonate, the silicates from it, and silicates, calcium silicate, it gets locked into the carbon dioxide, gets locked into it, and it produces calcium carbonate and silicon dioxide, and ultimately this calcium carbonate. I do not want you to get into the details, just to tell you that while these silicates were being taken up by carbon dioxide, what happened was that huge quantities of silicates had absorbed this carbon dioxide, and as a result, what happened was that global cooling ensued. So that's what we say. So Himalayan rise and subsequent formation of this fluvio-glacial system and the monsoon, it brought down the global temperatures. So entire global temperatures were brought down during Cenozoic pretty sharply. So on one hand, it cooled the earth because of the sequestration of carbon dioxide by this. On the other hand, something interesting happened, because when carbon dioxide levels fell significantly, trees, that means forest trees, those trees, they somehow cannot, survive in very low carbon dioxide, situations. Therefore, most of the forests that were present in particularly in areas which are below shivalics or even shivalics and those, so most of the forests started disappearing. So forest trees started disappearing, and a new theme, biological theme, a new theme which was mostly of C3, C4 plants. These are special kind of plants. They have different kind of photosynthetic system, and this and this is mostly present in, this is called Krantz anatomy. I do not want again to make it very, very, difficult for you, but these are the grasses which have these, a very, very, beautiful system which can operate even at low carbon dioxide levels, at ambient carbon dioxide levels. So new theme developed during the Miocene times, and we had the trees, the tree land, the forest land was now replaced by grasslands, which had with interspersed with some trees here and there. So a major shift happened. Now the problem was that once the trees disappeared, once the forest disappeared and grasslands came, this animal, this is called Civipithecus. This is a primate which was present during that period of time. It was a frugivore. That means it was mostly fruit eating. So most of the fruit eating animals, were that time dominating the landscape. Now, when the trees and forests disappeared, then the Civipithecus also disappeared. And as the grasslands came in, we started getting more and more herbivores. And so we started to begin with browsers, then omnivores, and then mixed feeders, and ultimately grazers. So we ultimately had these, hipparion and horse and, hippo, or one-horned rhino and gazelle and all kinds of those. They came much later. So you can imagine that if Himalaya was not there, we would not have got this change. We would not have had this kind of transformation. Now, I want you to appreciate that just because of Earth's tectonic movements, how climate is shaped. Okay, so if somebody tells you that by planting a tree here, by planting a tree there, we will bring in some difference, so forget it. That's wasting our time. Now, I will come to that a bit later. What I'm saying is that the master director of this entire process is the Earth itself. Okay, and today you can see the later relatives of Shivapithecus, which are called orangutans, which are in the Indonesian archipelago, Malayan archipelago. So still we have orangutans living there. So therefore, I started some years back. I started thinking in terms of that. To begin with, it was the rock that shaped the life, and now it is the life that is shaping the rock. And so I started this study, which I was fortunate that which Harvard allowed me to lead. I led this study, and we have published 4 or 5 papers out of it. And what we are seeing is that what kind of evolutionary change that means. The biodiversity, the flora and fauna that we see in the Himalaya today is all because of the rock shaping the life. That is a product of that rock. Whatever the rocks did and the subsequent climates did ultimately, brought the biodiversity. So this is just the sum and substance of what I talked so far, that this is how it started. Ultimately, currently you have Himalaya, something like this. This is the famous Nanda Devi Peak, as you can see. This is a picture taken a place called Verinag in Almora. So we now quickly get from millions of years to about 6,000 to 4,005 years ago, when humans started populating this land. And one of the first things, the symbols of culture were these kind of cultural symbols of humans, because a number of this is what I learned myself. Nobody taught me this. I've subsequently found, if you see most of our temples, they are this triangular structure. So I argued in my book that they are triangular in structure because humans found Himalaya to be extremely intimidating. So just to get rid of that intimidation, they started making smaller Himalaya in each, smaller. So they started making them. And most of these temples, if you see, are triangular in shape. But those who live in the Tibetan plateau, which is a relatively, flat piece. So most of the Tibetan temples are flat roofed. Okay, so just I thought that I might bring it. So therefore, humans always mimic their surroundings. Okay, but now come down to the modern India. One of the important cultural responses, which 1983 was a turning year for India in terms of cultural progress. Maruti came onto the scene, and you can see suddenly in 1993 what happened. You can see the passenger car production. We were producing something about 150,000, or even less than that, about 100,000 or so, and suddenly we started, in a matter of 7 years, we fourfold, fivefold. And this is the automobile boom that came with passenger vehicles. So we must thank Mr. Sanjay Gandhi for this. And then with the vehicular boom came tourist boom. So same thing. So these are the tourist numbers to Mussoorie. So everybody who had a Maruti car in Delhi post 93, he put his wife, 2 kids, and mother, father, or parents in the car, and let's go to Mussoorie. So everybody wanted to go to Mussoorie, and not only Mussoorie but also in the Nepal Himalaya. This is exactly because large number of people went there also, because Mussoorie would have been far from there. And so as the automobile boom happened, also there was, because we didn't have sufficient gas or diesel and petrol, what's called gas. So we started then importing, because we needed more and more. So you can see exactly after 1990, the requirement of gas, that means the automobile gas, had went up so much so, and we fell short of so much of it. So these we started feeling short, so we started importing. So gas guzzling was followed by importing of gas, so gas guzzling. Therefore, what happened was, so these are number of pilgrims to Uttarakhand. You can see what happened after 1993. It's just like a hockey stick, inverted hockey stick, just going up over the roof over a period of just 4 or 5 years. Okay. Oh, of course, there were and if you look at the automobile pollution, results, then it followed that when the automobile boom happened, the pollution boom also came during that period of time. So it was followed by pollution boom. So that's an indirect, that's a proxy for that. And then when you look at what kind of pollution is there, even deep in glacial systems, Satopan Glacier is just at the back of Gangotri Glacier, where from Ganga rises. So even in Nainital, Mukteshwar, Kullu, Dehradun, you can see the amount of black carbon which is present there, and all this is from the planes that goes from, which is the automobile exhaust from there. And the impact, the immediate impact is that black carbon, it leads to, for example, the black carbon levels at higher Himalayan elevations above 4 are 3.6 and 116 times higher than the Arctic and Antarctic. So you can imagine, and what do is that they lead to glacial ablation. So glaciers, because black carbon, once it settles on the glaciers, then this black carbon can absorb a lot of sunlight, and it can it can lead to faster ablation. Ablation means melting of glaciers. So melting of glaciers. Now I will quickly turn to that when we see that there are things which are there, then why are skeptics saying that there is no climate change? This is a data which you cannot negate. These are called temperature anomalies, and you can see, if you can look at this line, regression line, you can see that actually the temperatures are going up. So there's no confusion as far as scientists are concerned. Maybe other scientists, they have other, they can say. So even in the fact that global change, which is the result of climate change, what we know so far is that greenhouse gases are the culprits. It is almost fully established, about 100% confidence. It has raised global average temperature. It is significant, well established, so maybe 95 to 100% confidence. Anomalous weather phenomena, they indicate global warming. It is more likely because there is no direct causality. And drivers of present global warming are likely understood, where we have more than 90% roughly about confidence. Now, consequence of global warming, some well known, but many are uncertain. So the level of confidence is not that much. As I said, it is very difficult to bring a causality to it. But interestingly, the solution of the problem is very well known. About 90% people, 99% people know what can we do. We know that we can simply, bring down these oil guzzling, automobiles and oil guzzling or greenhouse producing all kind of activities. Okay, but the prospect of initiating a solution by industrialized nation is extremely uncertain. So I will just give you one example. I have put this Paris Accord, when it happened. Now, when the agreement came out on what they signed, I can tell you that carbon was there about 12, 13 times or even more, but business and economics was about 37 times. Water was not even mentioned even once. So I don't know what kind of international protocols you can sign without talking on water, but fill that. So what is likely the scenario? This is the kind of scenario which we are looking at, that if entire Himalayan glaciers were to melt, so so average sea level rise is about 8 inches or 20 centimeters, because every 1 degree set over 100 years, this is what will happen. That means over 134 years, there is about 0.154 centimeters per year, which means about 1.5 meters over 100 years. That means in last 100 years, we would have had sea level rise by 1.5 meters. Now imagine those countries which have which are just about 6 feet or 7 feet or 10 feet from the sea level, what can happen to them. So this is what was happened. And this, if all the glaciers of the Himalaya melt, so Himalayan ice cover is about 41,000 square kilometers. So that, that can bring about 1.5 meter sea level rise itself. So you can imagine what is the great importance of these. And there is some evidence. I would not say that, I would not say what somebody said many years ago, oh, Himalayan glaciers are melting by 2035, and ultimately we learned that that was a bogus story from a place called Terry or some place. The gentleman who was the DG of that, he was chairman of that ICC report. Therefore, sometimes these ICC reports are bunkum. I'm sorry to use that word, but sometimes they are not. They simply do Control C, Control V from some kind of places. They are now more, I think they are now more aware. So I don't want to be running any institution down, but but sometimes when they don't listen to hard science, deep science, and they look at what is in gray literature. So my request to all of you would be that please don't look at gray literature. Gray literature is gray, so it will never tell you the truth. So ultimately, I got in touch with the person who had actually written that original paper. So he had indicated that if the present warming continues, global glaciers will be halved, or their mass will be halved by 2350. So they put that 2, 3 there before 5, and then or after 5, whatever you may call it, and they said, oh, it was 2235 or 2035. So they put a 0 here and there. Anyway, but this is an interesting picture of Gangotri Glacier in 1971. So you can see it. So there is a definite rise. So this is part 1. So we can see physically that there is some. But then, are there any biological signatures? So we started this work in 2007-8, and it took us 5 to 6 years to to come to this conclusion. And we found that we were looking at biological signatures of warming. So we were lucky to get the data from 1780 or 1890. So we had about 120-year-old data, and we rebotanized those areas, 2 valleys, Lonak Chu Valley, another valley in Sikkim. Our student Yasmin, she works for, I think, for United Nations somewhere. So she was a zealot. I told her in 2007, I said, where are you going? You know what you're doing to yourself. It is a very difficult area. There are no people there. Where are you going? She said, and she never complained for the 5 years she spent there. The only thing is, when she used to come back with the, absolutely that skin black, and the skin was peeling. Her skin used to peel from her face. But anyway, she did this work, and ultimately we showed for the first time that indeed, so this was the first attempt in Himalaya, real direct evidence. Actually, large number of species which were only found in Sikkim, they were now going up. They were finding it very hot, at lower elevations. So that is what. So their entire richness and richness per hectare. You can see this is how it happened. So you had more species shifting to higher elevations, and also at the same time the total species richness had significantly gone down. So this is the historical species richness and the current species richness, recent species. So you had, that means a large number of species had found nowhere to go, so they went extinct. So at the same time, the species ranges were shrinking. At the same time, a number of species which had nowhere to go, they went extinct. And these are the kind of species which are under. So you can see these colors and designs. I don't know whether humans, one of old professors who we don't know, of course, of botany, the famous P. Maheshwari used to say that, well, the greatest invention of humans is Coca-Cola bottle or Coca-Cola. So this is all what they can do, because humans cannot reproduce anything like this. They cannot produce something like this. So these are the colors of design. These are pictures which I have taken from Natula in Sikkim. This is, of course, near Sango Lake. So they are now, whether it is plants, birds, across, they are threatening. And also that these women have to go to higher elevations to get the grasses. So large number of endemic species, they are losing, battle, because their populations are small, because they are endemic, so they are small population sizes, and there is no place to go, and that's why they are losing battle against climate change. And in one of the modeling exercises is another work which our student, which my student Manish did. And what we are finding is that the grasslands, where you can find most of these beautiful, species, they are mostly in alpine areas, or alpine grasslands, or bugyals as they are called in Uttarakhand. So most of these are found there. But what is happening is that now we are seeing that more and more shrubs are getting into these alpine, meadows. And now that means this is a picture possibly in 60s, and this is what is happening now. So you're now getting more and more shrubland into these valleys, and this is what by 2070 this is what will happen to these to this. Currently, this is the kind of percentage we have area under these lovely, beautiful alpine meadows, but ultimately we'll be losing them. Therefore, we have argued, and this is last year, this paper, which Manish, we have argued that if that's the case, if we're losing these species, therefore the current biosphere reserve or current protected areas have no meaning, because their boundaries are changing fast, because the species are somewhere else now, because they are changing their ranges. Now, the part 3 of and this is the last one which I will be talking, is that now if this was true, if this is true what is happening here, if these shrubland it is intruding into the alpine community, then this poor guy called yak is in trouble. And because yak is the base of the pyramid of entire culture of highlands, because there is nothing that they do without yak. Yak is the reason that Himalayan highlands got populated. Himalaya, if yak was not there, we would not have had population at those highlands, because humans found that this is the only dung which has more volume, it has high calorific value, and manure which they could use this because there is very little, because there are mostly sandy soils at those elevations, because that is the Tethian part of the Himalaya, or where Tibet is. That is mostly the Tethya Sea's floor. So that floor was thrust up when Himalaya rose. So, and that is nothing but, there's no soil, so there is only sand there, and therefore this is the only way to fertilize their soils, and this is the only fuel, because there is no fuel wood, there are no trees there. So if that means that if yak goes, because there are the grasslands will go, grasslands will be changed into woodlands, and if the woodlands, because yak knows only how to feed on grasslands, and if there are only only now woodlands there, therefore yak goes. If yak goes extinct, this entire human culture, you can see, I'll tell you, though it's not a right thing to say, sometimes when it becomes extreme dry conditions, and if they do not find water, then Himalayan highland culture, some cultures, they give a small cut near the ear of this yak and collect blood and drink it. So yak is what is called the totem. I call it the totem of the frigid Himalaya. This is, whether they want wool, whether they want to build tents, whether they want to, of course, wigs, the pipes, the lamp oil which they burn in their monasteries comes from their combs they make out of it. Meat provides, the cheese it provides, then fuel in case of these dung cakes which provide. So human cultures would be impossible. The human culture would be impossible without that. And as this, Pancham Lama says that no Yak, no Tibetan people. So now we started our journey with the rise of Himalaya, and we are saying now that as the temperatures are changing, and if the grasslands are changed to woodlands, and woodlands, we have seen when the woodlands change to grasslands in Miocene, so Shivapithecus and other frugivores, they disappeared. And now there is a situation when when the grasslands at in the high Himalayan lands are being changed into woodlands, and now you have yak going extinct. And if yak goes extinct, then the human cultures will go extinct. So it is not only about the climate change. Is not only it's not a fad, one like jeans and Coca-Cola were once upon a time, or something like that, or Beatles were once upon a time when we were very young, rather. Okay, so this is more real. This is real because cultures can go extinct. So they do whatever they do with, and of course he is one of my students from Singapore. So he thought that it is a great thing to do, to ride a yak. So I let him. I said, let's, okay, enjoy. So I call him the beasts of burden. So, okay. And therefore now, so yes, the climate change is there, but what are our responses? So we got into tizzy because of this, some tweet, which some gentleman, I don't know. I am not on Twitter, so I wouldn't know, but I came to know a journalist brought to my, so the university has now gone into tizzy. So each one should plant a one. Now look at this. What is the argument? The argument is Canada has 8,953 trees per head, and Russia has 4,461 per head. USA has 716, China has 102, India has only 28. So the gentleman says, needless to say, what we all should do, each one plant one. So they are now saying that all the students should plant one tree. Okay. Now I call it environmental illiteracy. Look at this. Canada has, of course, it has so many trees. Its human population density is 4. Russia has 9. USA has 36. China has 153. India has almost 500. This is old data, so it should be 500. So what do you expect? People will give up their land. People will give up their houses to plant a tree. How do you get to this 8,950 or 4? You cannot even get into 716. So and look at their populations, and look at our populations. Look at their areas they have. Look at our area, what we have. Okay, so without thinking through, so you just give a clarion call just because it can get you some newspaper report. Fine enough. So what is the international scientific community saying? Would the tree planting help? What are the odds and constraints? What are the choices? Here, a drop doesn't make ocean richer. Now, it's now very clear. Globally, scientists, NASA, everybody else is saying, well, planting trees would not help the climate change. It would not. There are other problems which we need to address. Okay. Trees may be a very good source of sequestering carbon, but trees are not the woods. Trees are not the forests. A colleague of ours, one of my friends, so she recently published an important, she's at University of Connecticut. She published a work where clearly she showed that planting trees, one plant here, one plant there, one plant there, just doesn't make a difference. It is the existing forests which are 70, 80, 100-year-old. We have to protect them. We need to protect them, because it is not only that there are pollinator services, there are other services, there are sequestration services, one of the services. Forests have to do other services. They have to do habitat structuring. They have to maintain other diversity. So if you plant a tree somewhere outside your house, that's not going to create, a habitat for biodiversity. So therefore, whether these are scientists of Kew, They are now very clearly saying the focus should be only on letting forests grow naturally, as long as the conditions at the site, like soil quantity and proximity to existing forests, were suitable. So we should only protect and let the forests near the existing forests to reforest, to grow more, not cut any more forests, because it will take 100 years. If you plant a tree today, it will take it 100 years to sequester that kind of carbon to get 2 degrees Celsius, decrease in that. But by 100 years, all of us would be dead and gone, and everything would be dead. So this is what scientists say. They say their random appearance, spontaneously generated from seed and pollen sources near and far, mean they have astonishing genetic diversity. Nothing human beings can do in terms of planting and propagation. So by planting neem all over, or by planting a kikar all over, or by planting ABC everywhere, you are not going to help neither the genetic diversity nor the biodiversity, nor are you going to help that. So therefore I have, years back, I gave a clarion call that Himalaya must be protected where it is. And what should be done to protect the Himalaya? Because it's protecting us. Last year, I gave another call. I was lucky that nature editors thought it worth. So I said that Himalaya should be a big nature reserve. I have argued that why it should be a nature reserve. Because only these forests and these biodiverse areas will help to bring down, whether it is sequester carbon or to provide other, other ecosystem services, which Ananta teaches in her class. So if we need to do that, then we should protect the existing biodiverse forest. That is critical. Finally, because I did not want to disappoint Professor Saraf, this is one which I show others. This is in Sanskrit, which you're sure that this is Kalidas's. But more importantly, 1500 years later, a gentleman called Allama Iqbal, he said, "Ay Himala koi baziga hai tu bhi jise daste kudrat ne banaya hai anasir ke liye." So he's telling the Himalaya that you are like a theater or a stage. Baziga is the play field. Baziga is play field. A theater is stage. Daste kudrat means the hands of nature, which the nature's hands have made for its elements. So that means if you want to see true elements of nature, whether it is biology, whether it is water, whether it is glacier, whether it is anything, you should go to Himalaya. So it is the theater or the stage. Then it says, "Imtihane deed zahir mein kohista hai tu." He says, "Pasba apna hai tu, diware Hindustan hai tu." It says, to the outward eye, you are a mere mountain, but in reality, you are our sentinel. You are in India's rampart. So please remember, if Himalaya remains, India remains. If Himalaya doesn't remain, India will be in great, great trouble. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your time. If there are any questions, I would be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, sir, for a really enlightening and interesting talk, which has sort of set up the right kind of knowledge base for this course, and also gave us the right kind of questions to ask. The links between automobile number, tourist influx, and how pollution can grow in Himalaya. I mean, gave us a really interesting idea of the anthropogenic impact on the Himalayan region. We saw long-term trends and climate change, which has affected both floral diversity in the region. So, thank you very much, sir. We now open the house for any question and answers, questions that participants must have.
Sorry, I hope I did not overshoot my time. I just didn't know. You should have told me.
No, so we all wanted to go even more and give us some more info, but I mean, we are all mesmerized by the kind of information that you gave, and interesting images all over from Himalaya. So it was really good to listen to you, sir. So before we take up others, participants are probably writing their questions in the chat box. I have a question, a small query of my own. So you talked about elevational range shift, which was induced by climate change in the floral diversity. So I wish to ask that what kind of what is the magnitude of impact that you visualize on other species, like mainly about birds, because I mean, birds, we all know they travel up and down on the mountains in response to snowfall and temperature. So with the changing climate, do you think there would be a lot of changes in the bird migration pattern within the Himalaya?
Well, the birds are linked to the food sources they have. So if the food sources shift, like I said, that's why I gave an example of yak. Now, yak is a typical example because yak mostly, yak depends on the grass flora or some cypressy members of those. So if the grass flora goes, then the yak goes. Similarly, if a number of species, because particularly these birds which are at high elevations where nothing grows but seeds and other birds, other small herbaceous plants, their seeds and or corms or bulbs, whatever they can eat, they eat. So if they go, then of course bird fauna is going to be in deep trouble. So because they do not know how to get food. So if their food shifts, they shift.
Thank you very much, sir. So I'm sure that you would agree that this could be a very fertile ground for research if someone wishes to take up.
Absolutely, because we have some old, if we have some historical data of birds, and if you can go and find out that how birds shifted, have they moved, do they visit them anymore, or they did not, that will be very fascinating work. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
So, do we have any questions in the chat box? Participants, if you are late in typing of the questions, you can also switch on your microphone and ask.
2 questions are there in the chat box.
Yes. Okay. So let me read this question first. This is Himanshu Chaudhary. He says, my question is, as you have said, in an industrialized world, it is not easy to have environmental consciousness that could bring the desired results. Sir, what is the way forward to wake the masses to remove this environmental illiteracy everywhere? Oh, I think you got me wrong. I'm saying that the people who are at the university and in schools, they are environmentally illiterate. It is not the people. People know what is happening, because I was saying the other way around. Now, we don't want to teach people. They don't. Okay. The only thing is that there are 2 or 3 things which we should keep in mind. One, how can we get rid of this consumerism? Economist friends, Anudita may not believe in that, because the more people we have, more jobs we will need for them, therefore more industrialization we would need and things like that. So consumerism, it's nuanced. I'm not saying that so overconsumption we have to get rid of, and it is the overconsumption that is, and overconsumption means that to produce a kind of a paper napkin in an industry, it needs tremendous amount of energy. It is not the cost. आपको 50 पैसे में एक शीट या 1 रुपए में मिलता है या 10 रुपए में डिब्बा मिलता है, तो उसका मतलब उसका कॉस्ट उतना नहीं है. उसका कॉस्ट बहुत ज्यादा है, because the energy goes into it. Then all kinds of things. Therefore, first thing all of us must ask ourselves कि मेरे को क्यों जो है, why should I wear a sandal which matches my sari, or get a purse which matches my sandal, or I'm not or my suit or my tie should match my shoes, or shoes should match, whatever that nonsense. So we must reduce consumption. So that is one. Second thing is that we should somehow make our lives in a manner which reduces our both our lives and livelihoods on energy consumption. So energy कैसे कम consume करेंगे, because everything is about energy. So if we do a couple of these things, 2 or 3 things, then we will will be happier on this earth. Otherwise, will not. So
if I may just add to it, just respond to it, that please. Even economists today are talking about behavioral change and lifestyle change. These are the basic recommendations even coming from economists today. Behavioral economics talks
Yes.
about behavior and as an environmental solution, behavioral change and lifestyle change, environmental education, investment in environment protecting endeavors. But finally, perhaps we get constrained somewhere in the policy regime because it requires policy commitment. Like when you were saying we have to protect forests, that as members of the community, individuals can't really do much unless there is a policy intervention. Am I right, sir?
No, you are absolutely right. But I was only because the moment you talk about policy, you are giving that handle to somebody else. That's the issue. You see, but coming to economists themselves, my worry is that Partha Das Gupta will never get a Nobel Prize. He would not. They will not give him because they would see that, oh, he doesn't belong to us now. It's because they will offer Nobel Prizes only to developmental economists, not an ecological economy. So that is Herman Daly. There was a paper. I'm not saying it from I read in one of the journals why they would not. So the problem is that they still won't. You see, the problem is that this sustainable development itself is an oxymoron. I have been talking about why is it an oxymoron, because the more of this, doing more of the same thing is not going to deliver us from these ills. That we will have high economic growth, we will have more and more economic growth, then things will change, poverty will go, pollution will go. Both of them have not gone. So we have to look at certain alternate mechanisms now, alternate developmental path, alternate, how do we bring different kind of wealth to people. So I think this corona has taught us a lot of lessons. And many of you may not appreciate it because maybe you're not, because zoonotic diseases, most of these dangerous zoonotic diseases come from a certain region, Southeast Asia or bordering China, because most of these tropical forests and these dense forests are getting deforested, or their density is getting deforested, and most of these bats and other species, pangolins, bats, which can carry these vectors, these diseases, then they come into contact with humans, and then there is an issue. So if you protection of biodiverse forests is not only good to get those ecosystem services, but it is also preventing zoonotic diseases. Otherwise, you will get into deeper trouble. You see, imagine now a tiny molecule which nobody knows whether it is alive or whether it is non-living or living. With this coronavirus, COVID virus, with a small tiny thing, roughly around 30,000 or 20,000 of them can be put on the pinhead. You can imagine, and that has put the whole world into tizzy. We cannot do anything about it. कहाँ गए हमारे बड़े बड़े अर्थ मूवर, कहाँ गए हमारे बड़े बड़े बिल्डिंग बनाने वाले, क्या हुआ? खत्म, बैठ जाओ अपने घर में, सड़ रहे हो. So we must know what is our place in this hierarchy of ecological system. इसीलिए जो ऋग्वेद हैं वो मना करते हैं, वो कहते हैं कि you are right on the
I believe there is some network issue at sir's end. So
he was on the brink of making a very important statement. We will request him to reconnect, perhaps, Naveen.
Ma'am, you can give him a call if he has his number. So
I'll do it.
So thank you, ma'am.
He's reconnecting.
Excellent.
He's reconnecting.
I think it's the rain also. It's torrential.
Yes, ma'am. Today there are a lot of network issues, and so I think maybe it's heavy.
No, we've been fine at our end up to now, because there's another certificate course going on as we speak in the music.
MALR, yes, ma'am.
MALR, yes, Music Archives. So, but the important, the last point that he was making is, would be nice to hear what he has to
Yeah,
say.
this was really interesting. He was coming to some interesting aspects of COVID and post-COVID this situation. So let's hope that he is able to join back. Meanwhile, I'll request other participants, if you have any questions, you please put it in the chat box. I'm sure he'll be able to join in a while.
Yeah, that was a technology glitch. So it's okay.
Yes,
Sorry.
sir.
Sorry for that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So you were referring to the Rig Vedas.
Yeah. So I was. So what Rig Veda suggests is that as opposed to the other Abrahamic kind of cultures, which say that, for example, in the Arabic world, it is the man is Ashraful Makhluqat, so he's the he's the master of the universe. Therefore, similarly in Christian and Judaism, they believe that everything has been created for the enjoyment of humans. But in Hinduism and Buddhism do not say that. They say that, well, you have only so much right on the other resources as any other, millions of other lives have. So you should not take that, and that's how what Mahatma Gandhi ultimately said, that there is enough for our need, but not for our greed. So we have to get rid of greed if we have to be. So each one of us should try to be less greedy. And then, of course, once we have that moral pressure on policy planners, then we can do that. But if we continue to live our lives and lifestyles in the way we have, that's why most of the West and developed nations should now de-develop. They should. So unless they do that, it is it's a long shot. We will not be able to get. Yeah. Next question. So we'll get to the other questions, please.
So, so there is a question by Rishita Gupta. If you can.
Yeah, but I don't have any more questions in the
Chat box. Okay, sir, I'll just read it out to you, sir.
Yeah.
So the next question is by Rishita. Sir, people who are into this field, they are doing the research work, but what about us, the people who are not connected with the field directly? Can you do what can we do on our own as a part, as a part of citizen person?
I partly answered that question just now. Is that I said that researchers are, everybody of us cannot become a researcher in climate change or something like that. There are certain do's and do nots which are there already. So, for example, I said that we have to, at individual levels, at community levels, and then at national levels or international levels. So we can bring down the consumerism and this consummate kind of lifestyle. So I think that is what individuals can do. What governments do, that Anita just now mentioned. So we should put pressure on them, that what they can do. How can we have more and more areas under, because for example, we say that China of course has huge land. Our problem is that we have lesser land, we have more people. So the second important thing is that somehow we must stabilize our population, and we this is not becoming now population dividend. This is now becoming a difficult, because whatever India does, it becomes almost, it comes to zero, because we have too many of us. So whatever food you produce, there are too many. Whatever, river water brings to you, that falls short. So everything falls short. So we have to get also control over population. That is the second important thing. We must immediately now bring out population control, demographic control. Yeah.
So there's another question by Sunaina. She's asking, sir, my question is, as the Himalaya, I think it should be, continue to be militarized in the near future due to geopolitical reasons and border conflicts, what could be its impact on species diversity of Himalaya? Would different countries take into consideration the...
That is free of that is free. You can download my article. It is on the 3rd of July 2020. Go to Nature website. That is free. I have discussed it in detail. What should we do? Because this is a rather very tricky kind of or a very sensitive question for governments. So it's not only certain range. Yes, there are issues with that. But that's not the only reason. There are other reasons also, which are allied to possibly creating a lot of infrastructure and dams and other things which go to providing us electricity and what you have. So yes, that is an issue. But if you wish, it's the 3rd July 2020 issue of Nature. So if you wish to read, you are most welcome to read it. You can download it. It's free. It's just one page. It's 1,200 words. So. Now, briefly to tell you that you would find it very, very interesting, because if you are not a biologist, let me tell you that, it is some kind of serendipity, or it is serendipitous, may I say, that most of endemic species in Himalaya occur in those areas. They don't occur in the foothills or in the middle hills. They occur in these high icy areas. And if anything happens to these areas, any kind of human intervention in these areas, that means areas about 2,500 to 4,500. So that belt is an extremely important belt from the endemic flora point of view. Most of our endemic flora, richest endemic flora is there. जो नीचे का है वो उसकी continuity कहीं और है, जो ऊपर का है उस बहुत कम है. Lekin, this is our own, which Himalaya has developed on its own. It was developed only after it had got its current, topography or current relief. Usse pehle nahi tha. So most of these species, this is one of my forthcoming papers. A paper has come only about 5 or 10 days back. So in that we have actually, Manish, and we have discussed it, how endemism. So most of these species are just about 2 to 5 million years old. So therefore, they are our own. We don't get. So initially, when Himalaya was lifting, at that point of time, it did not have much of its own flora. So it was coming from all over places, from Europe, from North America, from China, from all over place. But now, 40% of it is our own. So therefore, we must protect it, because हिंदी में कहते हैं ये हमारी धरोहर, अभी हमारा, ये कहीं और नहीं है. Some of the Meconopsis species or some of the Susurrus species which I showed you, Brahma Kamal या कुछ, ये और कहीं नहीं है दुनिया में, ये यहीं है. तो अगर यहाँ से चला गया तो फिर कहीं नहीं होगा दुनिया में. So you will be losing. This is biological wealth. This is our wealth. Ultimately, tomorrow what use they will have for human beings, we do not know. Yeah. Next.
Sir, Radhika says, sir, thank you for that insightful session. The recent political changes have widened the gates to tourism in Ladakh. Every other person seems to be visiting there, especially the Pangong Lake. What kind of policy changes would you suggest to ensure that Ladakh is not met with the same fate as other hill stations?
Well, in any case, Ladakh has a very low carrying capacity, as it has very sparse vegetation. In any case, I don't know how many people can go there, because it is low in oxygen. So not many people naturally go there, because they'll find it difficult. Because anything above I'm not worried anything about 10,000 feet or 3,000 meters. Then it gets tough for most people. So they would. But those who are zealots and those who are very zealous, overzealous, they can get into damage mode. Yes, I can see some pictures now getting into Pangong Lake, and they want to, yeah. It will be unfortunate, but there is a lot of, there's a lot of, some kind of information asymmetry, may I say, between what the scientists or planners do, or the political governance does. Because they look after the constituencies, whatever constituencies be. So constituencies में किसी को जो है वो टूरिज्म करना है, टूरिज्म डेवलपमेंट करना है, उससे कमाना है. अब केदारनाथ ट्रेजेडी, वी ऑल ऑफ अस नो केदारनाथ ट्रेजेडी, बट देन दे वर सेइंग हाँ वो कहाँ जाते हैं, वो क्या खच्चर कितने, वो जब मर ही गए तो फिर क्या हुआ फिर अल्टीमेटली, they don't know that. So they want to now build 5-star hotels along Char Dham. They want to build. Now they don't understand. अभी आपको इसी मौसम में कितने लोग मर गए, गाड़ियां चली गई, लोग चले गए, मर गए. देखिए, this is anybody who dies, for him this is end of the world. और जिस फैमिली का कोई चला गया, for them, so you and I can say हाँ ये इधर 5-star होटल बनाओ, यहाँ बना दो, यहाँ बना दो, यहाँ पर धर्मशालाएं बना दो, यहाँ पर ये कर दो, लोगों को ले जाओ. अब उन एरियाज की कैरिंग कैपेसिटी 500 की भी नहीं है, 200 की भी नहीं है. अगर वहां लाख लोग जाएगा या 2 लाख लोग जाएगा, आप पता नहीं आप गए हैं कि कभी नहीं गए हैं, लेकिन अगर आप जाएंगे बद्रीनाथ या केदारनाथ, वो आपको मेरे ख्याल में यहाँ पर जो ये मार्केट्स हैं, मैं तो जाता नहीं, बट जो भी लोग जाते होंगे, उसमें जितनी जगह होगी मेरे ख्याल में वहां पर उससे कम जगह होगी. So what to do? Everybody wants to go. क्या करोगे?
So I think there is another question by Himanshu. Sir, you gave a reference of Rig Veda. Do you think there is a need to revisit our religious and cultural texts, traditions, to extract out their link with nature and environmental concerns? As we see, these texts have been limited to particular areas.
देखिए, ऐसा है कि I'm facing a quandary, क्योंकि there are some remarkable things in our culture. Let me not use words like religion. So let's say Indian culture, which developed, since Indus Valley civilization. And later on, when we started writing and put them, whether these are Ved or Puranas or whatever we have, literature, they are full of such, they're full of experiential learnings. They may not have conducted research by putting carbon dioxide in something and then seeing what will happen to wheat or rice or something like that, but they learned it through experience. And experiential learning is much better than what is called empirical learning. This is my understanding. So they came with that kind of philosophy, and they told you that, well, don't get married into your immediate, relatives or gotras or something like that, because it is a genetic reason. Because you and I, who have studied genetics, know that consanguineous marriages lead to a lot of genetic diseases. Okay. Or if there is a recessive gene which doesn't express in a heterogeneous condition, when it becomes homogeneous, it can kill you. It can create problem. So they learned it. Similarly, they would say कि भाई जूठा हो गया, इसको मत खाओ. For example, in Kashmir culture, that we don't touch food with our hands, with bare hands. We don't. So they would, even if it is in a steel glass or a glass which was of an alloy, so they will hold it with a wool, with a woolen kind of piece of cloth. Woolen. Now that today, now most of these, coronavirus or something, on clothes it doesn't, ठीक है. तो ये नहीं है कि प्लेट में बाहर खाओ, हाथ से खाओ, ये खाओ, वो खाओ, तो नहीं करते थे. तो so these were experiential learnings. Similarly, they said कि मत मारो, if you kill that, उसमें क्या हुआ. तो मैं तो अक्सर एक स्टोरी सुनाता हूँ, पता नहीं तुम्हारे क्लास में सुनाई थी नहीं सुनाई थी. I was very young. I used to, everybody is young, but when I used to go to school, I think मैं 3rd या 4th में रहा हूँगा. तो हमारा स्कूल, हम एक रिसेस होता था कश्मीर में, रिसेस के समय हम घर पे खाना हम 3-4 बार दिन में चावल खाते थे, सुबह जाने से पहले, फिर जो है फिर जब रिसेस में आते थे फिर 4 बजे और फिर रात को 8 बजे. तो anyway, so I used to come for recess and have food and then go back. तो वहाँ रास्ते में एक a dog, she would sleep in the sun. Even July sun in Kashmir is not very very cruel. It's very soft. So she would sleep. एक दो दिन मैंने कुछ नहीं कहा, लेकिन when I was, so I just kicked her in her belly. And बेचारा वो जो डॉग था भागा, वो करके जो है भागा. तो खैर जब हम वापस आए 4-4:15 बजे स्कूल से निकल के, तो my mother sort of was standing at the door. She wouldn't let me in. So anyway, with your mother you are always there. हट जाओ, तुम क्यों रोक रहे हो मुझे, that kind of thing you do. तो मैं नीचे उनके साइड से घुसना चाह रहा था. तो she said, no, first listen to me. You are not going to get into the house. So I looked at her. मैंने कहा, what happened to you? Why? मेरे को भूख लग रही है, that kind of thing. जबकि 12-12:30 बजे खा के गया था. Doesn't matter. So she said, तुम उस कुत्ते को मारते हो? Naturally, the first thing you say, no, I didn't. So she looked at me. झूठ मत बोल. Then of course, with mother आप ज़्यादा देर थोड़ी रह सकते हो. तो आपने कहा कि, तो I just said yes. कहता मैं आपको कुछ नहीं कहूँगी, because violence was very prohibited in our house. There was I never received any beating in my house. Never, ever. And I tell it to everybody. You should never lift your hand on anybody. That's that. So उन्होंने कहा कि मैं आपको कुछ नहीं कहूंगी, सिर्फ इतना कहूंगी कि इस जन्म में तुम, मेरा घर का नाम राजा था, तो तुम्हारा नाम राजा है और वो डॉग है. अगले जन्म में वो राजा होगा और तुम डॉग होगे, तब तुम्हें पता लगेगा उसका पेन कितना हो. वो दिन और ये दिन अब हम मच्छर को भी कुछ कहने से परहेज करते हैं. No, that was the first conservation lesson in my life, that the other life you have to respect. No conservation book of Michael Sule or somebody would have taught me this lesson. This is an experiential lesson. अब मैं उससे ये पूछूं कि अरे अगला जन्म किसने देखा है, ये क्या को उसके साथ जिद बहस करूं, all kind of thing. I may not believe in it, but the metaphor is beautiful. Professor Babli यही कह रही थी कि कि metaphors are very important in our lives. ये एक चीज होती है, कोई चीज उसको समझो. तो this is what our culture is. हमको ये, चलिए next. I'm sorry,
बहुत अच्छा रहा डॉक्टर साहब. प्रोफेसर पंडित, I don't know if there is a comment, but I do wish to share with you that I teach a course called the Hindi Film Song in our communication course, और उसमें एक मेरा theme है ecology and the Hindi film song. And I begin with the classroom scenes that we have. ये कौन चित्रकार है, हरी हरी, ये everybody knows these songs, और ज्योति कलश छलके, things which we grew up with, at least my generation, your generation did. These are anthems in our school learning, and we have imbibed them as just a matter of growing up, or even in the native Bengal, in my native Bengal, Dhono Dhanne Pushpe Bhara Amaderi Boshundhara. I mean, the extolling of the diversity of our experience on this earth as human beings, and the sweep of the metaphor, as you say, Jyoti Kalash hai, rather Neel Gagan Gopal Kanhaiya, Jyoti Kalash Yashoda Maiya, Neel Gagan Gopal Kanhaiya, Niche Aachal ke, ya Shamal Chhavi Chalke. I mean, we're talking about greenery and a green habitat in our poetry all the time. So yes, it's a part and parcel of our consciousness, which somehow you have mentioned. What you have mentioned is about global capitalism. We are, all the products of global capitalism, and zoonotic diseases will create the great boom for the pharmaceutical industry, vaccinations and so on. तो ये एक cycle में आ गए हम लोग.
नहीं, मैं अभी anyway, just because there was a syllabus being discussed a couple of days back, and well, members had some opinion, I had some opinion, not about the certain author which was being discussed, but so I was telling that head of department, I said, look here, when you tell such stories to our children who are in our classrooms, तो मैंने कहा कि वो वैसे ही मरे हुए हैं बेचारे आजकल हमारे जो हैं, उनका कुछ ना कुछ रोज टेलीविजन में देखते हैं या कहीं देखते हैं या यूट्यूब पर देखते हैं या ट्वीट और फेसबुक या जो भी होते हैं उस पर करते हैं कि फलां हो गया, ये हो गया, फलां के साथ ये हो गया. तो मैंने कहा कि वो लड़का या लड़की वो जो स्कूल कॉलेज क्लास में आए हैं उनको कुछ रिलीफ तो दो. मैंने कहा कि हम उनको ये क्यों नहीं बोल. मैंने कहा फिल्म का गाना मैंने ऐसे बोला, मैं तो एक्सटेम्पोर बोल रहा था उनको वहां मीटिंग में. तो एक प्रिंसिपल भी बैठी थी, देयर वर 2 प्रिंसिपल्स, कॉलेज प्रिंसिपल्स आल्सो देयर. तो मैंने कहा कि वी शुड टेल आवर चिल्ड्रन, आओ तुम्हें चांद पे ले जाएं. आई सेड दैट not, sometimes it is very important to tell positive stories because our children, our students already know a lot of negativity which is there. They are good enough, they are mature enough to understand. उनको सब पता लगता है. मेरे ख्याल में 2-3 साल की बच्ची को तो जल्दी पता लगता है. One of my friends at Harvard Medical School, when I was there, she was there, so she said that female, that means women develop maturity very early, because her entire work was on why there are accidents में क्यों 18 से 32 साल के लोग मरते हैं बहुत ज्यादा, disproportionately. So she sort of referred it to, because she studied thousands of those brain scans, and she found that myelin sheaths in male do not develop faster. In females they develop much faster. Therefore females never take more than chance. तो मैंने लेकिन जो मेल होते हैं वो थोड़े से ज्यादा experimental होते हैं. So yes, there is enough to learn from us, but I do not want to go to other side also. Problem इसकी ये है कि that इसका line कहाँ करें. फिर आप it is good to go back to your religion and culture, but then अगर फिर आप वही बात करने लग जाएं कि भाई साहब हम तो पहले विमान भी चलाते थे, हम तो सर भी काट करके दूसरे का वो करते थे, then it becomes a bit sort of
ridiculous.
हाँ, मतलब then you say कि भाई जो अब महर्षि कनाड फेलोशिप्स हमने करी हैं, तो महर्षि कनाड का जो एक्चुअल कंट्रीब्यूशन था when he for the first time talked about atom and when he was talking about centrality of physics, तो वो भी फिर उसमें माना जाएगा. तो जो एक्चुअल आपका है या जो कालिदास का मैंने रेफरेंस दिया यहाँ पर, तो वो भी कालिदास had, in fact I have argued in my book, why shouldn't Kalidas be why shouldn't he be designated as father of Indian geography? His description of Indian geography was remarkable. गलती तो हम भी करते हैं, हम हमारी चीजें गलत निकलती हैं, तो क्या हुआ अगर थोड़ी मोड़ी गलती करी. वो तो जेम्स रेनल ने भी गलती करी, लेकिन जेम्स रेनल जो इंडिया में आए 1800 कुछ में, वो फादर ऑफ इंडियन ज्योग्राफी हो गए. क्यों भाई? उससे पहले तो कालिदास ने पूरा बताया था कि आपका नॉर्थ कहाँ है, साउथ कहाँ है, रिवर कहाँ है, क्या है, दैट काइंड ऑफ थिंग. सो यूज इट वेरी जुडिशियसली. Culture and religion should be used very judiciously. चलिए, ठीक है.
So we will take up only last question now by Kirti. So she's asking that can species extinction be driven by climate change in Himalaya? So I think
I have shown you that that graph which I showed you, that a number of species, and we have given those species lists which were present there in 1890, we do not find them anymore there. So they are lost. So they are lost forever. In fact, my work is mostly on species extinctions. My paper, conservation biology paper, talks about this, that cumulative impact of global change, global climate change, and or climate change and human pressure on Himalaya will lead to large number of species going extinct. Yes, That is already there. We have named those species. We have given lists of those species. We have not seen them. We have not seen them. They have not been seen there in the last so many years. Chale gaye, wo khatam.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, I would also seek your permission to give links of some of your papers and articles on our course web portal so that participants can download and
yes,
read.
Yes, give these, the short ones which are written in a more style. You can give them. There's no problem.
Thank you, sir.
Our role is as teachers is that that we should disseminate knowledge. हम अक्सर ये कहते हैं, हमने कई लोगों को कहा कि ये हमारा काम एक्टिविज्म नहीं है. हमारा काम है क्लास में बोलना, समाज के सामने एक वो करना. मैं झंडा लेकर के खड़ा नहीं हूँगा, डैम बंद करो, ये करो, वो करो. मेरे टीचर ने मना किया था. डॉक्टर वीके ने मुझे बोला था, कहता कि तुमने अब साइंस में पेपर छापा है, अच्छी बात है, साइंस इज साइंस, मतलब उससे ऊपर कहाँ जाओगे, खुदा है उसके ऊपर, ठीक है. लेकिन अब आप मेधा पाटकर के साथ बैठ करके वहां पर वो मत लगाना. दैट्स नॉट योर रोल, दैट्स नॉट ए टीचर्स रोल. बिकॉज जिस दिन तुम्हारे स्टूडेंट ने वहां देखा कि तुम वहां पर झंडा कुंडा लेके बैठे हो, ही विल लूज रिस्पेक्ट फॉर यू. डोंट डू दैट. सो देयर इज अ डिफरेंस बिटवीन अ टीचर एंड ए एक्टिविस्ट. So our role as teachers is to disseminate as much knowledge to the society and tell them, make them aware. Uske baad they should take informed decisions. That our role ends there. That's it. That's my considered opinion. You may think differently. चलिए नेहा,
thank you so much, sir. Sir, I'm 2009-2011 batch student of Department of Environmental Studies only. And yes, sir. So today it was really great to listen. I just revisit. Yes, sir. I just revisited your lectures, and that you also taught me how V-shaped valleys are formed. And it was really a revisit from the MSc classes.
Thank you. अच्छी बात है. This is what we should do. We should अब जब बच्चे को पता ही नहीं है कि हिमालय ऐसे था ही नहीं, पहले मॉनसून था ही नहीं, ये कहते हैं कि शायद मॉनसून ही था, तो ये बताना चाहिए कि मॉनसून नहीं था. इसलिए ये जो क्लाइमेट चेंज पर डिस्कशन करते हैं, 90% people who talk about climate change, they have absolutely no idea about what they are talking.
Yes.
अच्छा, ये पूछो कि धरती पर क्लाइमेट है, मार्स पर क्यों नहीं है, जवाब पूछो, पता नहीं होगा.
True, sir.
Why do we have atmosphere on Earth? Why other planets don't have?
Exactly.
So deep science बहुत जरूरी है. You should be able to bring deep science in the form of stories, because story जब तक आप नहीं बताओगे, वो बच्चा समझेगा नहीं, वो relate नहीं कर पाएगा. So science has to be told in stories, okay? But the depth of science should not go. वो जो logic है, वो science का logic नहीं निकलना चाहिए उसमें से. चलिए, तो ठीक है. नमस्कार प्रोफेसर सराफ and Ananta, thank you so much for giving me time. Thank you Naveen and Neha. All right.
Thank you so much on behalf of IP College. I would like to extend my gratitude for, first of all, accepting and for such an engrossing and captivating talk, sir. It's always been a privilege and a great learning experience to listen to your talks. And I'm sure all the participants, and yes, of course, we are going to take a lot from today's session. Thank you so much, sir, for making it a memorable evening for us.
Thank you.
I would also like to extend our gratitude to our principal, Professor Babli Moitra Saraf, for always being a guiding force in all our endeavors and for her constant support in organizing the course. Thank you, ma'am. I would also like to extend my gratitude to Coordinator, Center for Earth Studies, Dr. Anindita Roy Saha, for helping in conceptualizing the course and for constant support in organizing it. I would also like to thank all the faculty members present here with us today. And last but not the least, the participants from all across the country. I would like to inform you all that as we know that today the course has been inaugurated with the lecture by Professor Pandit. So that's official inauguration for the course, and we will start from next week. You all will receive a meet link one day prior to the next lecture. And please keep a tab on the course web portal for all the details related to the upcoming lectures. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So the participants may leave now. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone.